Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here today, guys. And what a wide spectrum of different industries on here, and different people, different sized businesses. I love it. What I love to say is each of those industries, each of those companies require one thing that we all need, and that's people, right? So we are a company that lets you figure out what makes that person's head and heart tick. And then that way, and only that way, we know who they are and how they can fit into a role, how we can plan succession planning, how we can get the right person for our company or our clients' companies, because a lot of you guys work with other clients. So I'm going to share my screen and bring you through a small presentation. Again, I encourage people to ask questions along the way. There's no bad questions. I know that's a common saying, but it's true. So there's no bad questions, and whatever you guys need, let me just move my face over here so I can actually put this on the screen. And make this. All right. All right, so we are, again, what I was saying earlier, we are the leaders in a category called talent optimization. And I often say this when I talk about talent optimization. You know, the three things that aren't on anybody's P&L, any company that I work with, and I work with, fortunately, I work with a lot of companies. The three things that aren't on their P&L are culture, retention, and productivity. And what's crazy about that is culture, retention, and productivity are the biggest takers or givers to your P&L. Okay, so it either makes us thrive as a company, as an organization, or it actually takes our money down, takes our resources down, and we're constantly in this wheel of motion trying to get the right person and trying to figure out what's going wrong. The other stat I love to talk about is 5 out of the top 8 things that make company owners and C-suite and leaders stay up at night and not get sleep are people issues. Okay, so 5 of 8, that's a big number, right? That's a number that we have to get better at, and it means that it's good and bad. It's good that people are thinking about people, but it's bad because they're not getting it right the first time around. Okay, so we like to call ourselves the Moneyball of Business. Okay, so we use science and data to determine who a person is, what makes his head and heart tick, or her head and heart tick, and what drives them. So people have drives and needs, and they'll act a certain way, behave a certain way to get what they need, okay? We do 2 kinds of assessments, 3 kinds. I'll talk about the job assessment in a second, but 2 main ones for people. We do a behavioral assessment. Behavioral assessment is, you know, Margaret Ann's taking it, Bernie's taking it. It's 6 minutes. Okay, it's 2 questions. You're simply picking words. Okay, and from the words you pick, we get to determine how you'll behave in life, how you'll behave in work. We also do a cognitive assessment. The cognitive agility assessment isn't an IQ assessment. It is a cognitive agility, meaning learning speed. Okay. So think of IQ as the size of the sponge. Think of cognitive agility as how fast does the sponge soak up, okay? And then we link it all together with what we call a job assessment. So we actually understand the behaviors of what role companies are looking for. So what is the role behaviors, what is required, and then we link that to the person's behaviors. And science tells us instantly if that person is a fit or gap for that role, okay? So know how they behave. So what I was talking about 30 seconds ago. So this is the, obviously this is not a piece of paper. It's actually, of course, it's a link, but it is a 6-minute test. It's scientifically valid. There's no right or wrong answers. You're simply picking words, and each of those words is weighted differently. And when you can't really figure it out, because once you pick one word, the weighting of the other words changes. And it's not just the words that you pick, it's the words that you don't pick. So it's hard, almost impossible to, what I'd like to say is rig the system, right? You'll actually probably do yourself more disservice trying to fix it as opposed to just answering it honestly, and determining who you are. Okay? So what does PI measure? So we measure your A line, which is what we call your dominance line. Okay? So how you like to lead and generate ideas through an organization. If I have a high A, I like my fingerprints all over the decision. I like to lead the decision. I like to make the decision. If I have a lower A, I don't need to make the decision. However, I want the best decision for the company or my family or my life. Okay? We measure B, your extroversion line. If I have a high B, it means I quickly connect with people. People quickly connect with me. And I like lots of interaction with people, groups, committees, etc. If I have a lower B, it does not mean I'm not social. It means I'm more reserved. It means I want to think about things before I say them. If you ask me a question, I want time to digest that question before I answer that question. If you send me an email, I want time to digest that before I reply. It doesn't mean it's not a social thing. My best friend has a low B, and you'd think he's the most social guy in the world. Quite frankly, at a party, you'd think he's the highest B in the world. So we measure C, your patience line. I like to describe this one as, what do I need to do to unleash your full potential in the work world? And how do I have to structure that for you? So if we're a high C, we're very patient, we're very steady. You like to concentrate on 2 to 3 things at once, as opposed to 15 to 20 things. If we're a lower C, we like multiple things going on at once. We want 10 to 15 things going on at once. We have a high sense of drive. We have a high sense of urgency. And then finally, we measure your D line, your formality line. If you have a high D, you're very precise. The rules are the rules are the rules. These are the rules. We will follow the rules. If I have a low D and I'm a little more flexible, the rules might be a guideline. I'll look at the rules, but there has to be a different way to get there. And let me figure that out for myself and for the company. So then we get into job fit. So, and this is really interesting. So what I find, and a lot of the people on this call that are dealing with companies, is companies a lot of times do it backwards. And what I mean by that is they have their group of people and they say, okay, this is my group. Now here's what the goal is. Here's the business plan. Here's the strategy. And let's use these people to get there, okay? When really that's backwards, right? First, we have to determine where do we want to go? What do we want to do? What's the end goal? And then who will get us there, right? And how do we do that? We do that by assessing what the role is for the company. So for instance, a business development manager, which you'll see on my screen here. This is a link that I would give to 3 to 5 people in this company, okay? And they, in turn, would take 12 to 14 minutes and answer questions. And basically, they're just checking off boxes of statements that are relative and relevant for that role. From that, we get a job pattern. And you'll see the job pattern on my screen here. It is the orange boxes. So for this role, they're saying they want the A to be here, the B to be here, the C to be here, and the D to be here. And then and only then we decide who will get us there. How are we going to have success in that role? How are we going to create retention? How are we going to improve culture? How are we going to make sure that productivity is at its all-time high? How are we going to drive our bottom line? We're going to get the right person for that role. So when the candidates come in and they start doing the survey, and I will give you guys all an opportunity to do as well after the call, they do the survey and their assessment goes right over top of the role assessment. And instantly science tells us if they're a fit for the role. It'll tell us their fits, it'll tell us their gaps, and we'll be able to coach them properly to that role. It'll also tell us their cognitive agility and how quick they'll learn and get up to speed in that role. Why is this great for an employer? Well, it's great because now I can adjust my onboarding schedule. Now I can adjust my training schedule. If I have a lower cognitive agility, I may have to have an 8-week training. If I have a higher cognitive agility and I pick things up fast, maybe it's a 4 to 5 week training as opposed to 8 weeks. Okay. I'll give you an example like this. So it's like I said before, it's not IQ, right? So it's agility and speed. So if I said to, Chris McLeod from our finance company, if I said, hey, what's 2 plus 2? Chris would say 4. If you ask me what's 2 plus 2, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to count it out. We both got the exact same answer. We're both smart people, but Chris was able to do it like that. I had to count it out. So I might have a lower cognitive agility than Chris, okay? But we still got to the answer, okay? We also get a job profile from this assessment. So this tells us what person we're looking for, what they'll need, how they'll be. It gives us a summary of the role based on what we checked off in the statements, which a lot of our clients just use to copy and paste into their summary. And it gives us the characteristics. Then again, it ranks the candidates in order, puts it over the summary, and shows us their ranking. So now science tells us what person is best for the job, as opposed to us guessing and me hiring my neighbor's kid or my sister's new boyfriend, whatever that happens to be. I'm using science and facts to get to the bottom line, okay? Any questions so far? Okay. So what I wanted to—
I have one if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess there's a couple actually, but how do you deal with uncertainty? So I was going to ask you about this. You've said that it's based on science and theory. So I wanted to know about the theoretical framework, but more on sort of the practical side is, how do you deal with uncertainty? Because quite often for especially new companies or new projects, new roles, it's not well known that what it is that how to answer these questions. How do you factor in uncertainty on the company's side to be able to make this work?
So do you mean uncertainty in the person, Eduardo?
I mean uncertainty in understanding exactly what my company needs. You know what I mean? Like when we're dealing with a new project that's never been done, and you're actually innovating. You're not hiring. Okay, I need a new executive assistant, and there's millions of executive assistants around the world. We understand what an executive assistant does, but when you're coming in and saying, okay, we're analyzing the future of work, and nobody's ever done this before, and we don't really know 100% what the role is, how, or if say we're hiring a new marketing person, and but the company it's not like a large company. It's like, we know what a marketing person is, we can describe them, we know the tasks, we know that. Like when you're dealing with new companies, there's a large amount of uncertainty and variability and just sort of feeling it out.
Sure.
How do you deal with that in this, or is this required to have sort of more established company to be able to make use of it?
Absolutely. So absolutely, a lot of our base is startup companies or smaller companies. And Eduardo, we have a library of, we have two things that we would do for a role that you would say, I'm not sure how this looks, or I don't have 3 to 5 people that can assess that role. What we would do is we'd say, hey, take a stab at it with 1, 2, 3 to 5 people, okay? But then we would benchmark it against what we have in our library already, okay? So we have thousands of roles that are already in the library in different sectors and different industries. And then we would benchmark what you said the role should be, what the library or / whatever position that is in that relative industry is, and we'd merge the two to make sure that we got something that you were comfortable with prior to having candidates overlap on top of that role. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions, guys?
Can I add something to this question?
Sure you can.
So, well, actually my mentor is John C. Maxwell, and usually he said the goal is more important than the role. So usually people, when they think about role, that So this is why they're struggling. This is why they have maybe some uncertainty. And it's better to focus on the goal. What goal do we have? Because new projects always new. And all of us, we have in our lives new projects. And we see the goal, even Elon Musk, you know, he didn't know what he will do, but he's done.
Yeah.
So, and he couldn't tell how he will go there.
Yeah.
When he'll turn around, he can tell you, yes, I was going like step by step, so he can describe, but uncertainty is always can be covered by the thinking about the goal and just see the clear picture.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You know, it's, you know, this is why this is also great for succession planning within a company and making sure we know who's already in our company and who they are and what makes their head and heart tick. I'll give you an example. So in my younger days, I worked my way up through a company called Labatt's. I'm sure we all know that. I ran the beer business for on-premise for Canada. And prior to going in partnership with David, my partner, and doing this, you know, if you ask a young Jason Taylor, 24 years old, hey, Jason, the vice president of finance role is coming up. Can you do it? You know what I'd say? I'd say, absolutely, I can do it. And I'd say, yeah, put me in for that. I want that job so bad, and I'm going to make it work. I'll tell you right now, you'd fire Jason Taylor from that job. Okay, you get rid of me. Okay, and that's because my personality and my behavior doesn't fit that role. Okay, but if you said, hey, Jason, we know you've been working hard. We know that you're up for a promotion. The VP of Finance is coming up, but you know what? We don't see you for that based on who you are. We see you as more of a, you know, a sales VP or a business development manager VP or new projects. That's who I am. That's what I want to do. I like growth. I like big picture thinking. I'm not the finance guy that's going to do the books for Labatt's. Okay. So what did you avoid by knowing who I am? You avoided, you know, thinking that I turned stupid overnight, which I didn't. Okay. So how many times does that happen? We think, what happened to that guy or girl? Man, she used to be so good. He used to be awesome. Why isn't he doing it anymore? Well, that's because that guy or girl was put into a wrong position, and we need to take ownership on that as well. Okay. So you've avoided firing me. You've avoided paying me a package and saying, hey, thanks for all the years service. Here's something to not speak ill of us. Okay. Now you're bringing somebody into the organization. Okay. So you're posting it, you're recruiting it. You're hoping that that person does well in the new position. You're taking other people's time for training and onboarding that person. And there's a whole realm of money that's spent based on us, the organization, not getting what that person wanted right. And then, you know, there's times where there isn't a position for that person, and maybe it's time for that person to move on to another company. But I always, you know, I'm a big believer in better work equals better world, right? We're all happy. And we find out what a person will do as opposed to what a person can do. Okay, so will you do the job is totally different than can you do the job. You know, Bernie can do 1,000 jobs. He's a smart guy. Okay, but will Bernie do the job? Will Bernie come in day after day, week after week, and do the job because he loves doing it and because he enjoys showing up? And that's what we try to get to the bottom of.